One moment, Nivedya. That was a small mix-up, which is what uh, seems to happen on live shows. Something or the other has to go wrong. But in this case, welcome to the 31st episode of My First Job, the podcast. Now, we've been speaking to several people over the course of these episodes, and each career journey has been fascinating and wonderful, with episodes of anecdotes and the successes as well as the setbacks. Today, like we did in our 25th episode, we are flipping the coin. We have three wonderful young people who are setting out on their career journey. Each of them is already showing signs of doing something spectacular. So let's bring them on one by one and introduce them to you, after which we will get into the conversation and figure out what exactly they want to do in their careers. First up, Aishwarya Subramanian. Hi, Aishwarya. Welcome to the
Hi,
show.
thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
having me.
Okay. So, Aishwarya learned industrial design, worked as an industrial photographer, then transitioned to food, but she didn't just stop with learning photography. She learned how to make it, and she specializes in pastries, and so it does some terrific work on food. You can check out her Instagram feed. Next
Yes.
up, Yashvin Senanayake joins us from Sri Lanka. Welcome to the show, Yashvin.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. And you said that you've made the transition from music to marketing back in 2016. And then you've taken on content creation, which I think
Yes.
is one of the things that is one of the hottest subjects going around, because there's so much of, activity around content creation, and we are gaining. YouTube, I'm told, uploads about 500 hours of video a minute. So obviously it's not an easy game to play,
Yeah.
and Yashwin has his work cut out for him. And finally, Nivedya. Hi, Nivedya.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for
Okay,
having me.
wonderful. Nivedya calls herself a creative chameleon, and she flits between identity, products and media, digital interactions, and spatial design. So, this obviously means she has to vastly improve her repertoire and see and move between not just clients but media. And one of the things that she told me early on was that she loves visual storytelling. I'm going to put her on the spot in a couple of places, because how is it different from making movies? Because that's visual storytelling as well. But I'm sure she'll have a comeback, and I'm sure she'll have great answers to that as well. So tell me, how did each of you, in some way, I think you have come into a creative stream of your career. So, Aishwarya, why don't you start off with what is it that defined your early interests and how you got into this?
Yeah, sure. So I did my schooling in Chennai, and the school that I was in was called Abacus Montessori. And after 10th standard, when we were doing our 11th and 12th, they allowed us to mix between three streams: humanities, commerce, and science. So we didn't need to choose only humanities, only commerce, or only science. So mine was a mix between commerce and humanities. I chose arts, home science, which included nutrition and culinary, and business studies and accountancy. These were my four subjects that I chose.
Wow.
Quite a varied mix, yeah, because I knew early on that I wanted to stay as far as away from science and maths. I wasn't very keen. I wasn't very academically also very interested in these subjects. I was always more had a flair for creative subjects and topics. So I knew that I wanted to do something in the art space or the culinary space early on. And then I chose arts, which now has transformed to industrial design. and home science, which is now transformed into pastry chef. So that's what that's been like for me.
Okay, great. We'll go deeper into that shortly. So, Yash, what has
Yeah.
defined your career pattern and journey?
Like you initially did mention, I did make my transition from music to marketing to production and creative, like content creation. I think I drew a lot of inspiration from my music background, and especially because my family is are musical fanatics, and
Absolutely.
it's been a crazy journey. The transition's been crazy, but all the inspiration I've drawn, most of it is actually from my musical career side, and it's going pretty well. And I've been able to connect both marketing and content together in a way where not many people have been able to do here in Sri Lanka. I'm not sure about India.
Okay,
You guys are really smart,
right.
but yeah, so it's been amazing.
Wonderful. Okay, so Nivedya, your story. Where does it begin, and how did you happen to be doing what you are doing right now?
So I've always been fascinated with the idea of space making and how it really affects emotions and narrates our senses around us. So that's how I started pursuing architecture. And while I was a student, I was always curious to explore different design verticals, whether it is print media or digital, and anything from graphic design, product, and publication, packaging, literally just exploring, because I always felt a designer should be versatile, and there is never a boundary drawn to segregate different fields of creative minds. That's something I truly believed. And while I was exploring as a student, I always saw that I enjoyed talking about different brands and how they started, and helping them either translate that story in a spatial manner, or like with the creatives with advertising that we have, some sort of a campaign, even like in terms of the digital space like the website or social media. And I think it's morely that brand story that I wanted to take forward, and that's why I think I enjoy calling myself also a visual storyteller, not really bound to one vertical, but morely just the
Yeah.
concept of it. So
Okay,
that is.
that's great because no, that's very true. One of the things that I notice is that earlier it was fine if you knew, your basic, you got your reading, your writing, and your maths fine. Now it's like photography, music, space, exploring space. All of these have become almost like basic skills which you need to understand in order to express yourself better. And obviously, the competition is much higher. What you need to do is a lot tougher. So Ashura, where do you? What are the things that defined how you chose what you did? Because why did you decide that you wanted to learn to make pastries and not merely photograph them?
So, anyone who knows me well knows that I've always been very interested in food. I think MasterChef Australia, the TV show, probably sparked this interest for me. And I've been watching travel documentaries on food from a very young age. So, I've always been very interested in food, but somehow after 12th, I pursued design, product design. I wanted to get into that. So, I did that as my bachelor's. And then after that, I worked in design in Bangalore for about 6 years. I was with the studio. And then I thought after COVID, I said, now I have to pursue this passion of mine and I had to get into the food space. So then I pursued my pastry chef course in Bangalore. And yeah, I tried my hand at it recently. And I think for me, it's when you put so much effort into creating pastries and baked goods, it's very time consuming. And if you don't take a good picture of it, I don't think you're doing justice to the amount of time and effort that you've put creating it. I think that's where that came from, that I wanted to showcase what I've been doing and document that journey on social media. And that's where photography also came into the picture. And yeah, I've been now doing it professionally, but started off from just wanting to document what I've been creating.
No, that is often the journey because you do it because you're interested in it, and spending
Correct,
time
yeah.
on your interests is really the best way to figure out what your career is like. So, Yash, you've got into movie making, or at least I think we briefly touched upon this, where you said you created a film that was uh, about a certain. Was it a place or was it you trap?
Okay, so I did recently release my first documentary. It was
Okay,
about a very, how do I say, a very important person in the fashion industry, especially in Sri Lanka.
okay,
She's 86, 87 years old, and she's a pioneer in the industry, to be honest. And it was actually
okay,
a really cool opportunity to be able to create this documentary, and we worked alongside the Australian High Commission and Curtin University, and a lot of people, a lot of professors from UK on their sabbatical who made this their mission, this story their mission. And after almost 3 years, as to my knowledge, of them researching and doing, creating all this story, that I was able to bring the vision to life. And it's playing at the National Museum right now. I think this is the last week that it'll be playing, and
okay.
yeah, hopefully it'll be available online as well.
Wonderful. She's 86, you said,
Yeah,
or
she is
87.
86. She's 86. She's
Wow.
86. I actually have
You,
I have this. So this is actually the release from the documentary day, and
okay.
it's a book that one of the people in the team wrote about her, and it's an amazing book. Hopefully, all this material will be available online, and
It's great.
is yeah,
That reminds me because 6 yards on her own terms is the that particular cover, right? And
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if one of the earliest campaigns for Vimal, a brand none of you is familiar with, it said 5 meters can be a lot of mischief, which is about a sari campaign.
Okay,
So, I mean, yeah, it just brought back one one
one of
particular
the
thing. So that's a fascinating journey, Yash. So yeah, and it's great that you got the opportunity to work on it and actually bring it out. And like you said, hopefully the documentary should be available online, which most things are these days.
yeah.
So Nivedya, what is it that you've been up to? What have you uh, been exploring, and give us a sense of some of the projects you've been working on and how you've managed to bring weave storytelling into your work.
So recently, there have been a lot of projects which are they require just awareness, and I think awareness is such a important thing when you have so many different types of advertising right at your fingertips. Everything from paid marketing in the digital space, and I
Right.
think that is the best time when we can go back to the roots and just look at what is around us and just observe the spatial part of advertising, that is the billboards, bus shelters, and just everything common man would be using. And recently we've been going through campaigns that require that. Maybe there are some brands that they've been there in the industry for so long, but they just want to have a new story to tell, or they are brands that are very young but they have such good potential to just shine up as much as their tough competitors out there. So I think recently we've been trying to follow trends that every common person can understand, relate to. And something interesting that is coming along the way is looking at bus and other transit mediums as advertising verticals in its own way, because something that is trending right now is the traffic condition in Chennai. And why not take advantage of that? Why not tell people a story while they're on their way home or on their way to work? It's just a way to communicate and build recall in that manner. And also just it's kind of like to give them a reminder on this is what is there and these are the choices that you have. So I think it's making use of what's around us.
How do you? Okay, that's interesting because you're flipping the equation from something that is online to saying, okay, if people are spending a lot of time offline stuck in traffic, even if they have their. So, is there an example that you have, or is it something that is underway right now, which tells you about something, or it's work in progress, so you can't discuss it?
It is work in progress, but
Okay.
I think it's mostly like I think over here we have a lot of projects that happen across different verticals, and
Okay.
it is not a choice that the client comes up with where they say, we want a hoarding, and that's what we're looking at. It's
Right.
mostly
Right.
like
But
a
you're
strategy that you come up with, saying you
right.
research on their target audience, you stand in their shoes and see
What things are like.
who are they
Okay.
resonating to, what
Okay.
will work for them. And I think it's that
Right.
strategizing part where the whole visual storytelling comes in, because you can promote a luxury brand to only their target audience, right? You cannot promote
Right.
it to people who are not going to buy it at the end of the day.
Right.
And
Right.
everyday goods, it's only going to be to people that are going to use them at the end of the day. So I think it's
Okay.
to stand in the shoes of who will be using that product or service and look at it
And
from
then
that
try to
angle.
figure out. Okay. Wonderful. So, Yash, give me an example of something you remember from this film shoot. How is it interacting with this lady? And is there one particular incident that stands out during the shoot, or something that she said, or what happened?
Actually, documentary making is way out of my. It was way out of my comfort zone, to be honest. And
Okay.
this entire project in general was a massive challenge, especially being a creative in the industry for the past 6 years. It's been really challenging, and this documentary challenged me to a point of how do I actually tell a story, and how do I actually um, grab the interest of young fashion designers or young fashion enthusiasts in the industry right now, who are about to peak out and be somewhat you know um, create statements basically, and it was one of the biggest
So,
challenges.
okay. So, how did you approach this? Did you have a conversation, several conversations with her? How does the film begin?
uh, I incorporated, like I said, a lot of audio engineering went into the whole production of this documentary. And back then, I could say, "Oh, I had a massive team to help out with." No, but no, I had a very small team of very committed bunch of boys who helped me throughout to kind of create um, something different. We incorporated sounds of the handloom, and to start with, to her voice, to slowly introducing the sounds of nature around her, because she's a very centered person in life. She loves nature. She doesn't like to stay in one place. She likes to do do things differently to anyone else in the industry. She wants to test her limits, and that's the whole image I wanted to kind of portray with the documentary. And it was, I think, the most easiest part was to communicate with her, because I felt like I was talking to maybe even my future self, and some
Okay.
of the things she said, it was very inspiring. Some of the things she said, she was a person um, who was kept and said, okay, look, you have to marry. This is the age you have to get married at. And she said, no, I don't want to get married. You give me the money you have for the dowry, and I will create something. I will make something out of my life. And she went to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, University of Manchester, and she studied architecture and design
Wonderful.
and textile design. And she was, I think this is the most inspirational piece I've worked on this year. And I'm very, I'm still mind blown about how
Yeah.
some of the things that she said. Very.
No, it's fascinating because one thing is that you have someone who's starting out in the industry, which is where you are, talking to someone who's traversed the entire journey, which is like she's 86. So obviously she's been through life and she's looking back on it. You're looking ahead. So that's a
Yeah.
lovely meeting point somewhere in between, which is, I think, one of the fascinating parts when you have collaborations which are between people with vast differences in their age gaps. Aishwarya, when we spoke, one of the things you said is, well, I asked you, how did you move from, getting your photographs to look better? So why don't you
Yeah.
tell us what that process has been?
So for me, actually, I have a personal account on Instagram where I used to post occasionally, very rarely, whenever I used to feel like a dish is worth posting for. And then one of my friends actually suggested, why don't you create a public account for this? Because it was, she felt like there could be people who are interested to see experimental food and food that is actually styled to create a story. So I started off using only my smartphone, which was back in the day not very great. I had to do a lot of post processing to make sure that the image looked nice, and I would never use filters, but I had to keep adjusting, contrast, exposure, brightness, all of that to make sure that the food looked good. Eventually, I got hold of a DSLR and I started shooting with the camera. And I think it's just practice. Like during the lockdown, during COVID, is when I used to practice every single day. I was on work from home, but there would be pockets of free time during the day where I would pick up the camera and just shoot. And I think that's what's helped me. Sort of create my own style also in food photography, because now I feel there is a demand for food photography because it's such an important visual medium. When looking at food, you want to salivate, and you want it has to be drool worthy food
Yeah.
shots and all of that. So I think it's now brands see the importance of food photography even on Swiggy, Zomato, and all. I think it's important because only if a dish looks nice you feel like ordering it. So it's become quite an important part of
But
selling your food.
don't you think that people are getting overwhelmed by it right now? Because there's let's say you scroll past 40 images in Instagram, and
Correct.
sometimes I think that my eye is caught by an imperfection rather than perfection.
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, I
In
do
the sense
understand.
that how do you manage to, because you have to sort of figure out, and this is something that I got to know when I was looking at the early days of Instagram. And apparently the reason they introduced so many filters was precisely why you what you mentioned early on, that
Mhm.
the quality of cameras on smartphones was so bad that they had to
Yeah,
use filters in order to make it acceptable. And then
correct.
uploading it would take even more time, so they figured out a method by which people would write the caption for the photograph, and then it would get uploaded. The moment they said publish, the photograph came up. So that was like a, oh, my image is out there. At that point
There.
people never really thought. And for me it's been a real instruction that people communicate with pictures alone. I was wondering why
Correct.
Snapchat is so popular until it's there in the name. That is, you snap and you chat. That you chat
Yeah.
through photographs. But to someone of my age, when I'm putting on, I open the app, and the first thing that I see is a camera. It disorients me. I don't know what to do with
Mhm.
it because I don't know how to navigate from that to the actual interface. So
Correct. Correct.
what comes so naturally to all of you is not something that comes naturally to us, because we are not in this paradigm at all. We are sort of intruding into, whereas for you it's something that you take for granted. I mean, you said you just picked up a camera and shot at the point when cameras were still on, you had to use, you had 12 frames or 36 frames in one roll of film, and that would take at least a couple of weeks to exhaust, and then you went and developed it. After that you didn't know which were the ones that were badly exposed. So it was crazy when you now have the option to just click, remove, delete, click again, change one small factor, and then do it. I mean,
Correct.
you
Yeah.
don't look at it
Absolutely.
as a privilege.
Yeah.
You look at it as something that's workflow. I mean, I look at it and then I say, okay, this is what I do. So, Nivedya, tell
Correct.
me about one particular job that you've really enjoyed doing. Take us through a sense of what you were briefed with, how did you arrive at the creative, and what is the final result?
Sure. So there was this one project that we worked on, and it was a spatial branding project for a retail store. And I think the beauty of it is the fact that it is not just for the customers, but also for the employees that work there. Because there were certain things we added that did not just, it's just about making their day just a bit better, and maybe also including the interactive factor on how they can also have a quote for the day, or have an employee, just like a session where they can just get to know each other a bit more. And this retail store, what made it really interesting is that the way we started the entire process, the the brief was just to make sure that, of course, there is obviously the selling part, or selling
Right.
section of that, where you have to think about how you can spatially organize it to sell better, to showcase the latest products. Of course, the advertisements also have to be put out there in the spatial branding. But I think what really made this project special was this sort of a brief which was given for the employees as well, how to make the employees life a bit more convenient, just to upgrade their current lifestyle. And to think about a way where we can have these kind of session where they talk about their day, to talk about their kind of a small customer that came in and that made them happy, to write all of these quotes on the walls. So this project, when we approached it, it was a kind of like a bifold kind of an approach, where you had to think about both the person who's coming into the store as well as the people who work there. And to do the visual storytelling aspect, we went with a way where we can talk about not just a product, but how people really sell and resonate with the product. And in this case, it was fashion. And
Okay.
for the employees who work there, they do come from a fashion related industry. And we kind of did a visual that was, it was tying both the customer and the the person working there, and it was actually showcasing the store in like a section like format, which is like
Okay.
very architecturally based. So I think this project both combined my interest in spatial terms as well as the branding and visual communication terms, and I think that's why this project is very special to me. And the feedback that we got as well, it really resonated with the brand messaging that we set out, as well as I think it's something that was a memorable experience for both the employees and the target audience.
Great. So, Yash, what is it that, how do you approach filmmaking? Is it color, content creation? Is it color? Is it mood? What are the things that go through your mind when you're coming up with the ideas?
Uh, okay, I have a very different perspective to content creation. I see a lot of young creatives coming out right now, especially here in Sri Lanka. They buy a camera, they see an opportunity to film, and they pick up the camera and they watch an inspirational video and they shoot it the same way that they see it, and they put it out there, which is something that I'd expect someone to do in the initial stages. But I'm seeing the same people who did that probably a year ago still keep on doing it, and what I like to do personally is, yes, we all look at inspirational videos, we all do, but why not look deeper into the story, and why not look deeper into your final objectives after producing this movie, after you post it.
Okay.
And with my background in marketing, what we like to do is, we always ask our client, we're like, okay, look, uh, we are going to produce this video for you, we're going to do it differently, we're going to make some unique content for you, but also, what are your intentions with this video? Yes, you want to post it on Instagram or Facebook, or publish it on YouTube. We really don't care about that. What we care about is what you want your final results to be. So you're making an investment, what's your return? So we always look at ROI. And um, we're working with a brand really closely right now, Society's Clothing. It's a clothing brand with a lot of story based in it. And we just finished producing a bunch of Instagram reels for them. They're dropping this new collection based on the story of Japan. And there's a lot more
Okay.
content to come. So we're just teasing the audience right now, and then we're just gonna hit.
Okay. So Yashwin, there is a comment.
So this is actually Aiden is actually one of the first people I connected with in Sri Lanka when I started creating content, and we used to climb
Okay.
rooftops and chase sunsets all around Colombo. And he's now in New Zealand. He's gone a long way.
Okay.
He's actually a film photographer. He uses, I think he uses 35 millimeter film to kind of take pictures of artists in New Zealand, up and coming artists in
Okay.
New Zealand. Very creative guy.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, I mean, I'm beginning to. One of the things is sometimes you think you feel a little jealous that you didn't have all of this available to you. Maybe we had more offline stuff, we had more, but I think you have a profusion of things that you can work with. So, Aishwarya, how have you transitioned? You said now that you've moved from this into UX and UI as well. So, what's happening there?
Yeah, so industrial design was what I was doing before I came into pastry, and I was in that field for about 6 years. And UX UI is something that I'm entering. I still haven't entered it. I'm still doing a short online course on UX UI, and that was
Okay.
sort of that's my upskill into in the design field itself. I still plan to be in touch with pastry and baking in the form of a cloud kitchen, but industrial design itself is designing of like daily objects, like any physical product, toothbrush, comb, iron, toaster, everything. And I think that's physical product design. And now I'm entering into digital product design, which is designing of apps and websites. So yeah, I'm excited for this.
Yeah, but I'm saying the range of things that you're exposing yourself to in terms of saying, okay, my interests. Do you at some point wonder if you are diluting the effort or do you think you're acquiring more skills? What is
I think
the.
it's acquiring more skills. So
Okay,
because I've already tried my hand at industrial design, I know what it's like. I think for me, it's just the curiosity of UX UI now, because I feel like I'm somebody who I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I get bored doing one thing for for a long time. Like I feel like I need new and interesting things to keep me going, and I feel that's how I even entered pastry. I was sort of felt saturated at my job. I felt like there was no more growth to be made at that particular job that I was in, and that's how I even made the switch to pastry. And now I feel like I could go back to industrial design, but I do want to upskill and try out something new, but in the same field of design, but just in a digital way. Yeah,
yeah, I think one of the aspects that does come in is that you will need to explore because you're trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I really want to spend time on. The repetitive aspect is something that you can't escape in life because
correct,
beyond a certain point, to get better at something, you have to keep doing it. I
correct,
mean, the simple fact is that if you're a musician, if you're practicing for 5 hours a day, you just have to keep at it. And maybe it's the same thing you're doing over and over and over again. But it doesn't, you can't sort of say that I mean, I found as a writer, unless I write every day, I can't get better at it
yeah.
because
No, practice makes perfect. That's definitely
yeah, yeah,
for sure.
and it's a kind of depth that you acquire over time. So I still remember that when you the point that you made about saying that you focused not on the subject as much as the props. So if you wanted to show your grandmother's recipe, you looked at things which were older as props, and then you looked at a brass vessel in which the actual dish
Yeah,
was, because I think that's what gives it in today's this thing. If you look at chefs, this thing, some of the aspects which are there, it's all right there. uh, None of it is really coming from a the kind of depth which is there has to be. And I think there is so much more that it's become a problem trying to figure out what are you going to concentrate on, how do you hope to
correct.
solve this problem. Nivedya, why don't you tell me how you manage to focus?
I think I'm a person that really believes in the process, and I find it that in a creative field, there's when we the process is never a linear line. It just
Yeah.
there's a lot of repetition that happens. There's a lot of ideation that requires like even in the middle of the entire project, you might even rethink on your direction.
Yeah.
So for me, I think having a process and really understanding and respecting it, that even if it doesn't go one way, there is still another solution and we can come back to it. I think it's
Okay.
that.
So let me ask you straight out.
Okay.
If you're forced to get into a situation where there's a deadline in the next 3 hours, you're supposed to produce something. Okay. Where do you start?
So I think if you know your client, if you know who you're building it for, or if you know
Right.
who they're trying to resonate to, I think you will have a stronger stance from where you're coming at. You will understand, at least from your experience. Maybe you must have made a mistake before, or not resonating to the target audience or so. So from that you learn, okay, when it comes to this kind of a project, this is what you have to do. So that's where I talk about the process. So if you know your competitive analysis, you know this is who you're resonating to, you don't have to do the research part of it again. You just have to re-ideate on the concept of it, on how
Okay.
you're showcasing that.
Let me make a confession to you. Even after all these years in the industry, 30, 35 years, I don't know if I'm going to come up with an idea in the next 10 minutes or the next 3 days. I'm not sure. I want to do my best work for my best clients, but I'm not sure that I will get the idea here and now. I can't, because this is not a mechanical process. I can't put things out there and then say that no, in the next 10 minutes something will strike. It won't. And invariably, what have come back to clients is with this. There are clients who tell me after 2 days, what happened to the design? What happened to the creative? I said, I don't have creative that I can show you. So they say, no, let's see. I'll make the decision. Then you show him the work, and then he says, no, this is not it. I said, that's exactly what I meant. It's not there. So give me the time. And once the time is there, I'm not going to waste time to show you what is good. So I think you accept the bounds of your business. There's no point in, I understand there's a process. Yes, you have to do research. Yes, you have to figure out what is your moment of inspiration. But you can't nail down an idea by deadline. It doesn't happen, which is why a whole lot of things go into the last minute, because it is so hard to. Pressure is one thing that provides or provokes inspiration. You're under such pressure that you put together something in place, and sometimes it is wonderful. Sometimes it's lousy, but that is the those are the rules of the game. So I'm giving it to you from a different. Okay. Right. So, Aishwarya, what is your process for creative?
I think, like Yashvin mentioned, it's okay to be inspired by something, but not to copy it. Not to just exactly copy what you've seen. Especially for me, the creative plays out a lot in photography. That's where I have that liberty to create whatever I want, whatever content I feel like. So I feel for me it's important to put your own twist to it, but also to be able to stand out, because like you said, like you see so many pictures on Instagram. It's such a saturated digital
Yeah.
medium that you have to put in something different for you to stand out. It can be the colors, it can be the storytelling, it can be how you capture your shot. But definitely it is a creative process, and you can't, like you said, like you can't have a deadline for this. Like you can be up in the mountains and something might strike, and that might be it for you. Like you can't
Yeah.
have a deadline. But yeah, I think my creative process itself has been more of practice and practice, and see what works, see what doesn't, eliminate during the process. Especially when I'm shooting something, I might have my backdrop that I think I'm going to use, but of course during the process I change it, the colors, what works well, complements, what props complement each other. And I think it's just a work in progress sort of creative process that
That's
yeah.
always the way it'll be. That's always the way
Yeah,
it'll be.
Yeah.
Great. So we have a few comments which have come up, which is, I think, Yash, you've got a whole lot of people who are talking about you. One is,
That that'll be my mother.
yes. Who, of course, the great thing about mothers is that they never think you can do wrong. Here's Karthik, who says that, your social media links, which, if you guys are okay, I will add in the description of
Yeah.
the, YouTube. I just send it across and we'll add all these links, and whoever wants to get in touch with you for whatever reason, how they want to take it forward with you is up to them. Okay.
Sure.
Right. Uh, One more for Yash. And yeah, okay. That's great. I think there are a whole lot of people who have tuned in and who are listening, which is wonderful. So why don't you give me your creative process? Yes. What are the things that, let's say you're preparing to do a job? What are the things
Yeah.
that you sort of assemble?
First would be to kind of assess the situation, especially with the sort of high profile clients that we work with. Would be, like I said, what the end goal is very important to me, and also to my team, because once we do know what it is, it's very easy for us to proceed forward. The tone of music that we're going to use, to the setting, to location scouting, to colors, to absolutely every single little detail that we have to look at when creating a movie is, but recently, something that I'd like to highlight is that short form video content is up and rising, and it's something that a
Right.
lot of I think worldwide short form video content, especially TikTok and Instagram here in Sri Lanka, is booming. Instagram Reels, and every single business, every single personality, every single influencer to creative, to everyone is on it. Everyone is creating different types of content, which is beautiful, because I'm seeing things I've never seen in the past 6 years just come out. Like, I've seen people who haven't spoken to me in a year just voice out and kind of like put out some really good facts and really good tips and tricks for young people out there, younger people who are coming up in the market, to where we were, probably where I was 6 years ago. They're just starting out, and it's crazy that this information is available online for them free of charge through short form video content. And
Right.
I love this space. I love Instagram. It's been my point of contact for most of my clients, from servicing like the lowest profile clients to the highest profile clients. Everybody I know, I've gotten to know through Instagram. And recently, I've realized that I drew a lot of inspiration this year from the platform, especially for short form video content.
Point is that you say that, okay, what is it that you need to assess and assemble before you start? So
Yeah.
what is it
So
that you need to work with?
um, we work. Okay. Let me start again, but with a fresh perspective since you're back. And I've looked at creating content for a long time. When we started out, just like Aishwarya did, I started off with my smartphone, moved on to a
Right.
small Canon camera, to a Nikon, to now we're using film cameras to create beautiful content to some of
Right.
the biggest brands in Sri Lanka, and it's been absolutely amazing. And like I said, process is very simple, and we try to simplify it even further for our clients. We just want to know what you want at the end of this production. Then we want to set the tone, so we look at music, and then we see the colors, and we try to make it look as natural as possible, instead of using very artificial film like colors, but which in some cases is a must. But for a lot of content that we create, we try to use as natural as possible, try to keep it as
Right.
natural as possible. And
Right.
I initially mentioned, short form video content has been is freely available for a lot of people starting out, especially tips and tricks on how to kind of simplify your process in creating content and creating concepts.
Hmm.
And some of the videos we create go run as campaigns, and that means we have to look at more. We have to look intensely into what their storyline is, what their timeline is like, for a campaign. And yeah, it's a very simple process. It's basically knowing what your
Okay.
client wants, and
Okay.
then executing.
Get to doing whatever is there. Yeah. But here's a question for all of you. Why are there so many cats on the internet?
That's something I think
Why
I
why
haven't
is
figured
it
out
that
yet.
cats are so predominant? Even Google, for its AI, one of the earliest things that it tried to do was to figure out how to get how to actually identify cats. Anyway, there's a question which I'll answer, and then all of you can get in, which is, Gautam, you've asked how the creative process is a journey. All clients are in a rush. How do you deal? One thing about clients, Gautam, that never changes is the deadline. Before, in the offline world, you had 3 days or a week to create a campaign. At that point, you still had the last minute. The last minute was 3 days before. Now the last minute is before it gets approved, which means that a lot of people have time on their hands. I don't think there is an easy or there ever be an answer to a question, because the client is working on a different deadline altogether, not the one that the agency is being given. What has your experience been? So, Nivedya.
So I think there's always, I think communication is very important. And that is something that a lot of agencies or studios, they miss out on. They miss out on actually observing what the client wants. And there are these small hints that they drop because they're very unsure on what exactly they've come for.
They
They
want.
just feel like they
Right.
need Instagram, like Yash mentioned. They don't know
Yeah.
what they really require. So I think it is really observing and communicating with them and having, I wouldn't say a set of questionnaire or something, maybe just have a conversation to understand where they're coming from, what they require, and based on that assess those keywords that they give you, and then formulate a campaign plan, or then go ahead with the creative part of things. But I think it's usually a lot of agencies and even freelancers out there, they miss out on the most important thing, that is proper communication.
And listening to what the client wants. Okay,
Yes.
we've almost, we've spent 50 minutes, though a couple of interruptions. I think I've really had fun talking to all of you. So I'm not going to ask you for your long-term plans, because I think that in today's world is asking for the impossible. Where do you want to be 5 years from now and 10 years from now is one of those. So what do you want to do, Aishwarya, in the next 3 months?
So yeah, definitely one day at a time for me right now. So currently I'm doing my on UX and UI, and I hope to join the UX UI industry as a UX designer. And like I said, my cloud kitchen, I do want, because pastry and bakery is something very close to my heart, and it's definitely a passion of mine that I want to continue. I don't want to give it up, and it's also a skill that I feel if I don't do regularly, I'll lose out on. So I want to set up a cloud kitchen where I'm able to cater to people supplying my bakes and baked goods, and also, of course, continue with photography, because that's something that I've, again, another passion project which has turned into a profession, but something that
See,
I really enjoy.
yeah. And you're really seeing that, because I think one of the ways to assess what you really want to do is when you keep coming back to it.
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
as if you move away from it thinking, no, there is something else I want to do. And then at some point you say, no, I'm missing out that particular aspect in my life and I want to get back to it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, next three
Yeah.
months, what do you want to do?
We're building for the past for this year actually. After I quit my second corporate job after my 1 year contract, we've been trying to build this team of creatives to kind of mold them into be able to do the same thing that me and my friends have been able to do for the past few years, and we've been taking them along, and showing them how we work, showing them um, overall we just want to create a team that's capable of creating content in a way where we would want to create. And even if we are not there in the industry in a couple of years, we always want the ways of our work to keep
Okay.
going. And the plan in the next 3 months would be to have the most capable team to handle creating the most unique and amazing and crazy content in Sri Lanka, and that would be the goal.
That's a very uncreative aspiration, but I understand that you're coming in from a business perspective,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
wonderful because you understand that that is a requirement as far as business goes. Nivedya, you're very collected. Your statements are careful. I haven't seen you at any point, which is one of the things that I look at. Are we, do we say things after a great deal of consideration? Because today on the net, you can't take back anything that you've already put out there. So, have you as a generation become more careful about what you say and do? Which is, to me, it was crazy because for us, we would say all kinds of things with friends. But today, there's a lot of, what do you say, outrage which is manufactured and otherwise, which people are now adjusting. The way I see it is that people then look at this and then say, okay, it affects my work and it affects what I do because I have to worry about who is going to respond and react to this. So in which case it even limits your options for what you, so if you want to do something which is truly creative, you worry about who will get offended. What is your answer to that, Nivedya?
I think, as you mentioned, right, there are different sources from where you can, connect with someone. And in today's world, it is not just digital, but as well as, you have so many workshops, you have so many events that everyone's organizing. You get to meet people, you get to discuss what kind of work you do with them. And I think there is a certain sense of um, a limit on which you can really talk about your ongoing works, and because there is so much of disclosures and sense of privacy that brands seek. I think that is something that we've observed, because everyone just wants their campaign or a new direction that they're taking with the brand to be like a surprise, to be like something that no one else can copy. Because like as Yash mentioned, right, a lot of these designers, a lot of these upcoming people, in the name of inspiration, they look at campaigns and they think about trying it out for themselves. And I think that is one major quality for a person, to be very discreet, I think, about kind of work you're doing, because it is always out there and a lot of people can misunderstand maybe certain things that you are saying about the
Okay.
brand, or you know
Okay.
can affect.
No, you're right because I think when we were doing this, you didn't have to worry about brands. Never had to take political or uh, gender questions or anything that was very sensitive beyond the point. And frankly, a lot of what is going on today, I think, is also very hard to process right across the spectrum because it's not, in one way, it is giving, what do you say, it's allowing people to define who they are. In another, it's almost as if there are camps being created. What you're okay with, what you're not okay with, who you're okay to talk to, how you talk to the person, which I think will be one of the biggest challenges for creative people going forward. Because you can talk about now, Yashvin, the reason I said, this lady who's 86 years old, for
Yeah.
her, rebellion was give me the dowry and I'll go to Manchester and study. Rebellion today means 200 different things to 250 different groups. What is seen as rebellion by one is seen as promotion by the other, which makes the job of creative people extremely difficult. And I don't
Correct.
think it's going to get easier. So, in a sense, I'm happy that we only worried about whether the line was smart enough, whether the visual was engaging enough, and whether you managed to capture what it is that you wanted to say out there. Any closing remarks from all of you? What is it that, how is your experience of being on this podcast been?
I think
I
it's really
actually
wonderful, like to hear all of these stories.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
been great
ultimately
this
what
time.
keeps a whole lot of these things going. Yeah.
That's amazing. Very interesting conversation after quite some time of traveling, actually, and coming back to base and having this interesting conversation is something that I was really looking forward to, and
One.
fulfilled all my expectations. Talking to you guys, listening to what you guys have been up to, and it's nice that I'm all the way here in Sri Lanka, and a hop, step, and a jump away in India, and
Yes, just a hop step,
very
literally.
literally a hop, step, and a jump.
Yeah, from here.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
great to hear Nivedya and Yashvin's stories, and it's always great to connect with other creative people also
right,
and see what they've been up to. Yeah, it's been very
right.
fantastic.
So, thank you, all of you, for one of the things. This is the second time we've had this panel, and one thing that blows me away is the amount of articulation and clarity which young people have today. Sometimes I wonder if we had even 1/10 of the same amount of clarity. One is, of course, you've had the advantage of, processing, having a lot more influences and inputs early in life, but you've leveraged that wonderfully. And here's wishing all of you uh, a wonderful career ahead, lots of success, lots of learning, and a great time. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, and it's been great having you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank
Have a
you so
great
much.
one.
Thank you. Okay, so that was our second panel of the youth panel. And as usual, they had so many unusual things to say. And it's wonderful when they have a completely different perspective on how their careers are going to evolve and what their interests are. Thank you as always for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week when we have the next show of My First Job, the podcast.